Hello once again, people. It is the Appleton REIA podcast. My name is Dan Alborn, and once again, along for the awesome ride that is the podcast, Jackie Conkle.
Hello.
How is ya?
Excellent. Super excited about today's topic.
Yeah, this is actually, maybe it's a real estate specific topic, but applicable to any aspect of life.
Yeah.
And I think if you can grasp this concept, it can help you with whatever you want to do, but even more so with real estate.
Yeah.
And what we're going to talk about today is let's let the cat out of the bag. I mean, we as a whole, as we're recording this now, it is 2020, and there is just a lot of uncertainty in our world today. Whether we're dealing about, leadership and what's going on there in an election year, to just dealing with a pandemic that's going on right now with a lot of situations. People's lives are changing because of a variety of different things. And this uncertainty can really lead to some really challenges that people face, and really can take you down a bad path if you allow it. So what Jackie and I want to talk about today is how can you find certainty in uncertain times?
Yeah, and Dan, this isn't the first time that our world, our country, has been in an uncertain time. I mean,
right. You
look back at history, there's been a lot worse, right? And people have lived through it. They've prospered through it. They've come out better. And it's really, I think, as we talked about before we started, your focus, right? You can have fear or you can have focus. And it really depends on where is your focus and what are you thinking about? What are you doing? Do you have a plan? So let's talk through some of those things.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. I mean, for what you were just talking about, Jackie, I mean, we've been so blessed as a society over the last 30 to 40 years to really have just immense prosperity in our country and really in the world. I mean, you've seen wealth increase. But the reality is, if you talk to, from our grandparents from back at the turn of the century, from what they had to go through in regards to, like, the Great Depression, a lot of things that they do and the way that they act and behave is because of what happened in their world. I'm not saying we're going through anything to that level, but there's always uncertainty in life and in our world, and a lot of times it's cyclical, and we've been in a pretty good stretch that many people, in our ages, in our 40s and 50s, we've not really seen a lot of hardship that some others that have come before us. So this is our paradigm, this is our world, but at the end of the day, Jackie, you create your own reality, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about where you focus and what your thoughts are. I love talking about the book Think and Grow Rich. Chapter 1, Thoughts Are Things.
Yes.
What are you thinking about? Because if you're thinking about what you don't want, you're going to get more of that. And who wants that?
Right.
So think about what you do want and then focus your plan. I've been talking to a lot of people lately who are in, and of course with lockdowns and masks and the pandemic and the uncertainty and elections and leadership and, talks of taxes and all the different stuff, right? It's easy to become overwhelmed. And if you think about that and you inundate yourself with social media and TV and everything else, and, you're negative Aunt Nancy, it's real easy to just get depressed,
Absolutely,
right? And there's a lot of people in that boat right now, but you need to just make a plan, put it in your calendar for the week of when you're going to execute that plan, break it down into the tiniest of steps, and lay those tasks out each day and just go pound those tasks.
Right.
Those tasks. That's a really hard word to say. Pound those tasks.
Pound those tasks, baby. Yeah.
And then once you do them, give yourself permission to just say, okay, I did that. Sit in how that feels and go do something that gives you joy and enjoy your life.
Absolutely.
So many people are worried about the bigger goal and then, how is it going to be affected by taxes and how is it going to be affected by the economy and the market and everything else. And really all you can control is today. So let's talk about control.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to your mindset, Jackie. What can you control? And in the grand scheme of things, as an individual person, in the big picture of life and in the government and whatever you want to look at, there's very few things that you individually can change with whatever decisions can be made. Yes, you can contact a representative or get involved in local causes and things like that and be a part of the change, and I highly encourage doing that. But at the end of the day, what can you as an individual control in your own life?
Right.
And I always put it down to two things. I think there's some people that may say three, but it comes down to two core things. It's your attitude and your actions.
Yep.
At the end of the day, when you wake up every morning, that's the only two things you really have complete control over. And it starts with your mind, because if your attitude is not right and you walk into like the Eeyore syndrome, like, oh, woe is me, the world is falling. The reality is you're going to wake up tomorrow and you're, hopefully, be alive and live the next day. But the reality is, if you look at the other side of just like, this is the worst day ever and everything's just going to progressively get worse, your focus is in the wrong place, and your attitude ultimately dictates your actions. Because what happens when you have fear and timidity in your life, Jackie, you basically just, you kind of shrivel up and you don't do anything. Fear paralyzes.
It does.
Where if you have control and focus, that's what gives you that compass or that direction of where you want to go and gives you that ultimate purpose. And that's why focus is so important, and specifically getting your mind right and realize, what can I individually control? At the end of the day, what can I really control? You can control when you're going to get up every morning. You're going to control who you talk to. You're going to control what you put in your inputs.
Yeah.
Right? And right now, that's tough, because you can watch the TV, get on social media. We get inundated the radio, and you can get pretty depressed pretty quickly. I'd maybe challenge you to be evaluating if you come in and each day and you're just beat up, what you inputting in your body.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. If you weigh 400 pounds and you go get one more Big Mac, I mean, what result are you expecting, right?
Yeah.
And that is something you can control. So all those inputs, the social, mental, food, financial.
Nutrition's another big one for
all
sure.
All of it.
Oh,
absolutely. And so, we're making it sound like it's so easy, and we know that it's not. But
it's not.
Remember, every time, so if you're starting to feel overwhelmed or, fill in the blank, starting to feel anything that's not a positive feeling, stop and think about where am I and what can I control right now? Am I worried about something that I can't control anyway? Then ask yourself the question, in this moment right now, what can I control? What can I control that moves me forward? And if it's controlling who you hang around and maybe taking some people, down as far as how many hours you spend with them, you might need to do that.
Right.
Maybe you don't hang out and talk to negative Aunt Nancy so much. Maybe you block her on social media if you're going to go on, whatever it might take. But think about the things you can control and then put those things in place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the reality is, guys, is that when these things happen, you have to either look at the negative side of things of like, this is bad, or what a lot of people do is, where's the opportunity?
Yeah.
Whether
whether
you know this or not, some of the biggest shifts in wealth happen at some of the most challenging times in our country.
Absolutely.
Why is that? Because people think of a better mousetrap, or there is now a problem that needs to be solved, and us as the American public, we have great minds, and if you're listening, you're probably one of those that think of solutions that can really fill a need in people's lives. I mean, right now you think of people like, in regards to the Ubers and, all these companies that are providing food services during the pandemic.
Yeah.
These are companies that were around before, but only now they're like almost a mainstay in people's lives. That before it was like, oh, this is what only the kids are using, but now families are using these services. So out of the need of what happened, these companies pivoted, shifted, and positioned themselves to be successful.
Massive.
So if you think of things, what is the opportunity that's before me? Now your mind shift, right? Instead of like, oh, woe is me, this is going to be horrible, and pivot and say, well, what can I control to provide an opportunity? What are the opportunities? Now you're thinking down the right path, and you're helping shift what is a negative mindset to a positive mindset.
Yeah, Dan, I'm super excited. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm taking a minute to be sad, right? But at the same point, I'm super excited because a lot of people are just going to keep doing what they always did. That doesn't work anymore. While I'm looking at, while they're zigging, how do I zag?
Right.
Where do I go? While tax laws may or may not change, if they do, I get to look at it and say, okay, how does my business need to change to take advantage of what's now there? If I was flipping before and now I'm going to get killed on that, how can I buy and hold and make that successful? As we talked about earlier, people are always going to need a place to live. So, I mean, that's not going to go away. Cash might turn into Bitcoin and, this might turn into that, but housing is always going to need to be there.
Right.
So being in real estate is a pretty stable place to be. You just need to think about what is your strategy, what are your exits, what are your holdings, where do you focus? And so there's always an opportunity in real estate. It's just being really flexible in your zigging and your zagging as to find your new place, you
Right.
know, and what are the steps you need to take to really increase in that new space if it's a new space for you. And so again, going back to those little tiny tasks, and I tell you, if you don't know and you're just sitting there going, oh my gosh, I just don't know, and you're just feeling overwhelmed, it's okay. There's two things you can do. One, just take the time off. Take a personal day, take a mental health day, take a mental health week. I don't care.
Yeah.
Go out and do something that gives you joy. Go
Absolutely,
play golf,
yeah.
take a run, ride a bike, play with your kids, play with your dog. I don't care. Go on a hiatus and sit in the middle of the woods, you know, by yourself, whatever it takes. Or number two, find a pile of good books and start reading.
Yeah.
Because that's a really quality way to spend time that you're not sure how to move forward. You want to zig, but you're not sure, and you sure don't want to keep zagging, so you're just going to hang out for a minute. Read a handful of good books. Listen to some good podcasts. Do those positive things that are going to help you in that mental growth. And you can't help but move forward.
Absolutely.
You know, join some great groups, meet some wonderful people, have a dinner party at your house, invite the best of the best, surround yourself with those top 5 people that are going to bring you up. You know, there's so many great things you can do during this time, but a lot of people are going to be sitting and sulking
Oh, my word.
and
Yep, that's
getting
exactly what I was
angry
thinking,
and
yep.
rioting, and whatever it is they're doing isn't going to move them forward.
Correct.
And those 3% of people like you and me, we're going to rise up.
Yeah.
your
It's now is
time.
not the time to sit on the sidelines and like
gosh.
Jackie was talking about, sulk and worry and complain. Yes, it's good to take inventory, right? I think there is there is something to be said to stop, pause, evaluate, but then it's re-aiming at the target, guys. It's not like you take your tools and go home. It's like, okay, how can I hit the target more efficiently? And everything Jackie talked about is exactly really the elements that you want to put yourself in right now. I mean, if you're dealing with uncertainty, whether it's major in a world or a national level, or maybe it's a personal level, maybe you had some uncertainty with your life and you have a life change and with, you know, a death of a loved one or a transition in your home, whatever the case may be, whatever's come your way, you can use this on a small scale or on a global scale.
Yeah.
And these tips and techniques we're talking about are transitioning, can transition across those lines. So really, when we look at it, guys, you know, kind of the core of what we're talking about here today is really control your inputs, right? You know, what are you putting in your world to change your mindset? Turn off the TV, turn off the social media, turn off all the negative people in your life, right? If that's possible. Limit your interaction with them, right? And now start including more positive, forward-focusing people that you can surround yourself with, like Jackie just talked about. Bring them over, invite them over for dinner, do a Zoom call with them. If you can have coffee in person, awesome, do that. And then lastly, you know, take that inventory, you know, make a plan. Because if you're not intentional with what you want to do in life, and you may not know, and like Jackie said, read some stuff. Get yourself inputted with good stuff that will help you thinking in the right mindset. Because sometimes you can be so deep in that well, Jackie,
You're stuck.
you don't know where to go, right? So you need kind of that launching point, and that's where reading a good book. Talk to other people. What are some books that you would recommend I read right now?
That's it.
And I
Easy
think-
list to compile.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is
boy.
also be okay to be vulnerable. If you're in that space,
Yeah.
everyone's been there once or twice, if not multiple times. So be okay to find people that you can trust, be vulnerable with, and allow them to help you through that process. Because mental health is a true issue that a lot of people struggle with. And if you don't have good support in your life, it can really be a real drag. But then from there, it's once you kind of know your plan, be intentional, right? Put that time forward.
Yeah.
And then ultimately work your plan. Like you said, keep checking those things off. It starts with small things. Don't go big. Put the small footprints in place. And then before you know it, you're making the bigger strides, the giant leaps.
Oh, yeah.
You're bringing people alongside of you to enjoy the journey.
It's layering the little things that brings
Right.
you to the bigger things. And it's easier to bite off the smaller
Yeah.
things. But let me make you 2 promises. One is back to control. And we talk about, you know, limiting the people. Some of those people we can't limit because they're our spouse or whatever, right? But remember, you can control how you can't control them and what they do, what they say, how they
Yeah.
act, but you can control your reaction to that. And you might be able to unintentionally control them just by your reaction, right? If you're positive, maybe you're wearing off on them, you know,
Yeah.
instead of letting them wear off on you, maybe you can start to turn other people around by being one of those positive 5 to them. But the other promise I'll make you is that if you have kids or there's kids in your life, they're watching you.
Yeah.
And we really need to be affecting our next generations. We need to be that positive mainstay, because if you're running around with your hair on fire and you're scared and you're worried and those words come out of your mouth, you're worrying all the little people. And I mean, these guys are already flooded with it, because they're I mean, if you've ever seen people who are overwhelmed in social media, it's our younger population. I mean, that's their life, right? But also their school is all different. Everything's weird for them, and they're unsure. And so we need to be sure for them. If for nothing else, you need to be sure for them.
Yeah.
And so, find a way to focus on the opportunity, share that opportunity with the children in your life, whether they're yours or someone else's. But, send off those positive vibes and encourage the children today. Because they're our next generation, right? And if they're coming up in fear, that's a scary thing for all of us.
Absolutely. And I'll leave you with this as we're wrapping things up here, is that one thing that I've just started doing in like the last 30 days or so, and it's been, I'll say transformational, because it's really allowed me to focus on a lot of things in my own personal life, is start your morning off right.
Yeah.
I intentionally get up about 30 to 40 minutes early before I normally would, before anyone else is in the house, because it's quiet.
I love that.
And I spend quiet time. It's reflection. I have some spiritual time or whatever you want to do at that point in time. But the other thing I do is I journal, and I make a document of 3 things I'm grateful for that day. And it doesn't have to be grandiose. It could be a 1-sentence thing. It could be 1 word. But I'm telling you, when you start your day on the right foot, it sets your transition for the rest of your day. And then the other thing I do, the last thing I do, is I look at my day and I plan it out. All right, I'm going to do these things, firm but flexible, knowing that things are going to change. I'm probably going to get a phone call. Things are going to, be different. But I have certain tasks in my day that build towards the larger goal of what I'm trying to do. And to Jackie's point, when you build on those smaller things, they build on moving the bigger rocks.
Yeah.
And then that's how you can help ultimately change that mindset every morning you wake up. And then at the end of the day, be reflective. What's worked? What can you do better next day? And then start all over again. So hopefully, guys, this has given you some insight of just how to perceive what's coming after you, whether it be on a global, a national, or on just a local level, or on a personal level, and how you can find certainty in uncertain times. And that's exactly what the Appleton REIA podcast is all about. So if you guys want to know more, you can check out the club, appletonrea.com, find out what's going on. Check out some of the great benefits of being a member. If you're a real estate investor, there's immense savings that you get on a local and a national level with some of our vendor sponsors. And of course, always be in the know of what's going on locally in our own market. And of course, you can always check out all the podcasts online.
There they are.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Again, this is the Appleton REIA podcast. My name's Dan. She's Jackie. Have yourself a good one.
See ya.